Hi, everybody. This is Gad Saad. Hope you're having a good day. Some of you are undoubtedly aware that the second impeachment of Donald Trump, the Senate part, is about to unfold. And many of my ultra smart progressive friends and colleagues have argued that it doesn't really matter that you are impeaching a president who is no longer in power. You still have to do it by principle because what he did was simply too egregious, too detrimental to a democracy. Let me read for you the exact words that he said from his infamous January 6th speech. And by the way, what I'm doing here is in no way a defense of Donald Trump. It is a defense of foundational principles that permit a society to either flourish or sink into third world status. And no, I'm not talking about anything that Donald Trump said here, but rather about the way that people are handling the Donald Trump speech. So here we go. So he says, these are the really impeachable parts. We're going to have to fight much harder, and Mike Pence is going to have to come through for us. If he doesn't, that will be a sad day for our country because you've sworn to uphold our Constitution. So he said the word, we're going to fight. We have to fight for this. And then he continues, we're going to walk down to the Capitol and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. And then he adds later, I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. So what I've read so far is nothing that suggests a direct incitement to violence. If anything, he used the word peacefully, but he used the word, we have to fight for this. So using of the word fight, is a dog whistle for, a nuclear holocaust. And so I thought about it, and I now have come to the realization that it makes sense for the noble Democrats to be impeaching a president who's no longer in power for having used the verb to fight, because that is a form of direct incitement to violence. And by principle, they have to then impeach him. And so I decided to then, being someone who looks at the boundary condition of such laudable logic, I thought, why restrict an impeachment of a president to a situation where he's no longer in the office? We should push it much further. We should engage in active engagement with history by taking presidents who are no longer president for many decades, even better, presidents who are dead, and impeaching them, because some of the words that they may have used would certainly be based on this measure of using the verb to fight as a form of incitement. They should be impeached posthumously. So there's this guy, you may have heard of him, President Ronald Reagan, another inciter of violence, who in 1987, let me just make sure here clearly, became known famously as the Berlin Wall speech. He used very violent imagery. He said to the head of the Soviet Union then, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Tear down, vandalism, mischief, violence. So in Ronald Reagan using the word tear down, you can't tear down without it being a physical act of destruction. So if we could impeach Donald Trump after he is no longer in power because he used the word to fight, and then later he said we must do all this peacefully, but that's still a form of incitement to violence, then it certainly would fit any reasonable progressive logic that tearing down the wall, which brought down, by the way, in part, the Soviet Union, was actually something that should be a form of impeachment, post-mortem impeachment. There's no reason why we shouldn't be. So let's not worry about COVID. Let's not worry about the open border disaster. Let's not worry about the millions of people who've lost their businesses and their incomes. Let's not worry about, the existential climate change problem. I mean, I'm looking at my watch, and I really don't see us getting out from this probably by no later than next Tuesday. We probably have 4, 5, 6 days at most before we're subsumed by the tidal waves. And so why are we spending time worrying about impeaching a president who's no longer in office? Because, principles. And so I've come around to that belief now that we have to be impeaching. We have to engage in posthumous impeachments. That would be a true progressive goal. And so here what I'd like to do is read you another horrifying instance of incitement to violence by, again, President Reagan, who we can all agree is no different than Orange Himmler. So this is at the end of chapter 3 of the Parasitic Mind. Let me read you a passage that is very relevant. So I end this chapter with a very poignant quote from Ronald Reagan, uttered nearly 2 decades before he became president of the United States. So not only I think we should impeach Ronald Reagan after he's no longer president, after he died, but we should impeach him using a progressive temporal logic for things that he said before he became president. You see how this purification process works? So here we go. Here's the quote that I have at the end of chapter 3. But freedom, so quote, but freedom is never more than 1 generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they, in their lifetime, must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in America, where men were free. Close quote. He used the word fight. This strikes me as a direct incitement to violence. So I stand here before you, urging you to speak to your elected Democrat officials and find a way to posthumously impeach President Reagan. Slowly we inch. Cheers, everybody.